Instagram feed. So yeah, just keep practicing every day, show your work, even if it's experiments, and just, because this is how they hire people. They see things, you know, we're always looking for references for mood boards, and you know, if they find out you're local, they might bring you in as a freelancer, and that just builds a relationship, and you can kind of go from there.
Yeah, just to jump in on that, networking is really key. Two of the largest projects that we worked on came from our connections to recruiters, both coming from ILM. One was at PlayStation, and one had just started at Madison Square Garden, working on this really crazy project. And because we knew them from the days of recruiting, it was actually kind of funny they called me, because I specialize in rating ILM, but they hired us, and we wound up working for 2 years on the Sphere, exposing us to all different kinds of positions in different kinds of fields. And also the same thing with PlayStation. We started, we were contacted by a recruiting Lisa Dreo, and we worked on a stealth project for a new division of PlayStation that was not yet named, and we could not tell the people we were interviewing what they were interviewing for, but they were looking for a creative, like executive producer type person. They didn't want somebody coming from visual effects or animation, they wanted a producer. So we found somebody that they really liked. I think we got him from Guy Ritchie's company, but he had produced like Captain Phillips and Social Network, and so they hired him, and a year later they came out with a press release saying that this new division of PlayStation called PlayStation Productions was doing its first film, Uncharted, and then they went on to do Last of Us and things like that. So those were opportunities that we got. And then from PlayStation Productions, then we started hiring software engineers for their art services group in San Diego, and also a new one in Malaysia. Then when PlayStation was relaunching their live services, they asked us to hire all kinds of positions. You know, brand directors of brand marketing to VPs of content planning and all of that kind of stuff. And that just came from networking. And I'll shut up now. Okay, so how do you network and who do you contact? This is something that's going to be very foreign to a lot of people. So, you know, what are some thoughts? I know you mentioned some earlier, but.
Well, I think when I was freelancing in VFX, it was very different. You know, I just tried to. Actually, someone told me. You know, I told this story to someone earlier tonight. When I was in art school, we had a Pixar animator come in to the class and talk, and you know, someone at the end was like, "What's the best piece of advice you can give to us?" And she said, "Everywhere you go, just make friends." And I was like, oh, come on, like give me something good. But it truly is like the best piece of advice, because I've used it throughout my entire career. So in VFX, that's all I really tried to do. Other than what these guys were saying earlier, it wasn't really about my skill set. I don't even think I was that good. I just tried to sell myself. My one job, every time I had a job, was to try to get another job, to be totally honest with you. I've worked with Eric here. He's probably seen me do that when I should have been working. You know, I was just trying to meet as many people, and the producers. You got to meet producers. You know, they're the ones that hire. You talk to the recruiters. Go talk to HR. Say thanks for paying me on time. Honestly, people love that stuff, and they will remember you. It's like they're saying, you gotta stay on top of their mind. But in this industry, you know, I mean, it's very different. It's a different beast. I go to conventions and I spend a lot of money on marketing, and it's still networking. I mean, you still got to meet people and stay top of mind. You got to play the game. You got to play, you know, do your social media and do all the marketing things. But word of mouth is how I get most of my jobs. It's really none of those other things.
What kind of convention would you go to?
Lawyer conventions.
Oh,
you know, you go to where the customers are. You know, so that's all it is. But but word of mouth. You do a good job. You know, now I do rely on my skill set and my ability to deliver. I mean, it's way more important as a business than it ever was before.
Yeah, I feel like every industry out there needs some sort of visualization. So there is specific, you know, conferences, events. A lot of the stuff I do is screen design or UI design. So there's different groups online for that. You can make friends that way. There's a lot of groups now that kind of died after COVID, but again, I mentioned like the LA Auto Show. Just be a familiar face. Just keep going to these things, and talking to people and putting your work out there. And I think eventually, if you meet the right people and there's an opening. So a lot of those jobs are not really posted. It's somebody who's thinking about a project that's coming up. So if you're doing something along those lines and you can show it or reference something, you might be top of mind at that time. I think it's really kind of the game is like just always reintroducing yourself if you have to, or email them and just be top of mind. So when something does come up, I think you'll be a possibility, I guess.
Yeah, I think another key thing is also research. If you're going to a convention, it's a really good idea to know who's going to be there and who you're interested in talking to. So know about the company, and there's tons of places to get this information, and then know about the specific individuals you want to target. And then try to reach out to these individuals before the convention and preset meetings or touch bases or conversations. So the stuff is all out there. You just have to keep at it. All right, what are the nuts and bolts of getting started in this business when you're working in forensics? What were the first steps, second steps, third steps?
Well, it's like I said, you could try to do it on your own and try to find a client, in a more freelance manner to see if you can get a job that way. You can also apply to, there's expert or accident reconstruction companies out there that do these types of animations that offer not only the analysis of how these accidents happen, whether it's a premises liability accident or a biomechanic kind of movement, but you can go to them as well. They have their internal teams that can create animations, and it could be a good place to start. I mean, you do have the skill set to do it. It's just, are you approaching these jobs in the right way? And I think that's the thing that they're going to be looking for. But in terms of the actual art creation, it's there. That's the easiest part, to be honest with you. And let me tell you, no one ever gives me notes on the creative side of things. It's only on the details, the accuracy, are we showing what we need to show? If we can nail that part, then we can make it look as cool as we want. We can do whatever we want with the camera. We can do whatever we want with the lighting. We do stuff, like if I'm trying to show, someone's in danger, for example, I can frame it in a way that really does that. My education in working in VFX with some of the most talented teams gave me all the tools I need to frame these things in a way to make it biased, to be totally honest with you. It's not biased, nothing's biased, but you can really frame it in a way that tells the story and emphasizes crucial details. That's why they're hiring us, because we are the experts to do that. And no one's going to call that stuff out. No one knows to call that stuff out. It's really a privilege of our craft to know how to do that stuff. And that's kind of the fun part. You take care of the nuts and bolts, and then you can really spend as much time as you want to make the road look as real as you want, or the trees to, if you want to populate it in any way you want. So I think that's one of the, that's the craft you have, but you can apply that skill set. I would apply to those types of companies, or companies like mine. There's a handful of them out there. Talk to me. I need people sometimes. So here I am.
Yeah, yes. What were you saying?
I was going to say, I wouldn't think that you would need to know about very much lighting. You would have to know an awful lot about modeling and lighting, because don't these cars have to be all sparkly and beautiful? And you need to know how to do that.
Yeah, so kind of back to the smaller teams and the many hats. So I do come from a background where I was doing lighting and rendering, on the advertising side. But when I transitioned to internal, into General Motors, we did that too. We did a lot of internal videos for senior leadership. We started, I remember when I first got there, it was like a 10-minute video using Maya, and then we quickly went over to Unreal Engine because of just the rendering time and everything. But when I'm not doing that stuff, I'm trying to focus more on the user experience, which is all the screens inside the vehicle that we're building. We're building that in-house. And there is lighting, but lighting on the vehicle. So the external lighting, all the lights inside, and there's these different lighting animations, different color changes, different patterns. A lot of these cars are pretty, they're all futuristic. It's all, 2030 and beyond, completely electric, self-driving. It's just kind of like an airline experience. There's no steering wheel. It's just like this big screen sometimes, or maybe it's minimal car and there's barely no screen, but you're communicating in different ways, and lighting is one of those ways for sure.
Yeah. And be interactive with the human.
Yeah, it's interactive. So there's some of the cars we did was like there's eye tracking, it's just following you where you're looking, and voice activation. So we're playing with that kind of early on, doing synthetic voices with fake AI assistants. It's a concept. So there's many ways you can approach that depending on the brand. They're all different. So I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah.
So the thing that I talk to all my students at Otis about is start looking at different industries. A couple examples, we did a project with Wayfair, and Wayfair was going through the process of taking all of their asset imagery and converting it from 2D images to V-Ray renders of 3D models. So they were looking for digital artists of all types. So that was one example. It wasn't really that groundbreaking because IKEA had done it 5 years before. So if you ever see a photograph of the umlaut couch in a living room, that's all CG rendering. And then we did a project with Shutterstock, and actually we did a couple with them, and it was after they bought TurboSquid, and they were looking for ways to monetize the model library of TurboSquid. So they were looking for people that were artists, but also understood technology, and more importantly, could communicate art to software engineers. And that's a whole other field of technical artists. They're like everywhere. And the skills are transferable. Now we're working with a company called Doppel XR, and we're looking for a lead graphics engineer / architect who is an expert in GPU rendering and a bunch of additionals like GLSL, and it just goes on and on and on. But the 3 candidates that have made it through the 4th round of interviews, all of them came from visual effects, and they all came from art backgrounds. One that we just interviewed today, he came from the Academy of Art University studying animation. So the thing is, you have to don't just think that it's only these companies, but also think about what new jobs are coming up, and just keep your eye on it and be aware of it. Sam earlier mentioned AI, and that's a big part of it. I would recommend that earlier in the month, the Visual Effects Society did a panel on current uses of generative AI in production. And it was really fascinating. There were 4 different artists were talking about what area they were, what they're working in. One artist was an illustrator who had got a degree in theater direction, and she was basically building models, AI models for clients, so they can create repeatable and predictable results. And because she was an illustrator, she was feeding the models with all of her own work. So this is another whole, I'd never even heard of this job until I saw this panel. And then the 4th panelist was a gentleman who had worked on here for Robert Zemeckis. And he was talking about his process of working on that project. And yeah, I know, it's terrible. But he was talking about actually developing hardware and working with the software team at Island Studios up in out of Scanline. But I digress. I think.
Yeah, I have a question. So we done?
Yes.
Yeah, questions. I was just
What
going to say.
software do you use?
I use
What
all,
do you need? What do you need?
I use all the same softwares. I use Maya. I render in V-Ray. I render in Unreal. Depends on the job. We use 3ds Max to do when we're working with laser scan data and point cloud data. We want it to be as accurate as possible, so we'll actually use 3ds Max because the tools that software has to create the model of the environment from the point cloud, because you can snap it right to it. And then we push it all into Maya. Substance Painter, ZBrush, all the same stuff that you would typically find in a normal pipeline. That part's all pretty standard.
Are your crashes and accidents simulated in Houdini at all, or?
No, we don't. I don't use Houdini. I've never been a Houdini artist, so I've never. It's not a pipeline. I've hired Barrett over there to do some blood effects in Houdini that look amazing. I wish I could do more of that, by the way. I mean, hire him because his work is amazing. But the we do simulate car crashes in something called virtual crash. I don't know if you guys know that one. It's really good. And there's PC crash. There's a few of them out there. That, you know, there's a lot of them out there that can do simulated cars, but the difference between these is it will actually, the way the dynamics work, you can really pump in or pipe in a tremendous amount of variables to make that look quite, you know, or really to simulate real life, so it's pretty helpful.
You have to reverse simulate, like do the end point and then work back?
Sometimes, yeah, it can be helpful, but yeah, it depends, I guess, on the crash. There's a flip or something, it's, I don't know, I'm not the one that does that, so I don't really know. I hire people to do that. I've never actually used it, although it's pretty easy. I should probably try.
When you're not using the software, do you do keyframe animating inside of Maya? Is that how it's usually done?
Definitely, everything's keyframes. I mean, we utilize accents for motion capture. I try to do that as much as possible just to save time and money, so that is one thing we do. But like medical animations that we, super boring, tools flying in and cutting things and flying out, all of that's standard Maya animation, yeah.
You had a question earlier. Do you want to?
Yeah.
Go for it.
I had a question, I guess, about AI. It was more of a clarification question.
Okay.
I understand machine learning has been a tool for artists and creators for a pretty long while at this point, many years already. But when people refer to AI generally, are they referring primarily to generative AI or just significant improvements to these existing tools that makes them able to compete with primarily heuristic-based applications?
Well, I mean, generative AI, I recommend that VES panel because it is really fascinating. There was one artist who was a 3D trainer at DreamWorks, and he had got into using AI-supported tools for motion capture, storyboarding, creating turnarounds of 3D models, and he was doing it all on his phone. And then there was another guy who was more of a map painter, fine artist, and they talk about their process. I think when you're looking at generative AI, you have to think of the pipeline. The gentleman from DreamWorks, he brought up a screen of all of the software packages that he uses on a given day to do this work. And there must have been 30 different packages up there. And he said that he spends $1,200 a month on licenses, but a lot of the stuff is free. So, there's a lot of different software packages out there. And when you think about generative AI, try to think about it in terms of a pipeline, and then see what other software surround it. And again, I think the VES thing is a really good place. It's a really good place to start.
Only if you're a member, not everybody here's a member.
Are you sure?
To access their video library.
I don't know. I
will
played
look
it.
it up. Well,
I played it in Otis.
I'll put it
Me and
up.
Joan are in an argument. So
Really?
but does anybody else want to respond to this?
No, I mean, it's such a generalized term. I don't know. I think it's hard to know. It's thrown around so much that it's, it's hard to say that it's always, specified in one way or the other.
Yeah, I think like AI is the umbrella term, right? Everyone's talking about AI, and I think machine learning is like a subset of that, like a tool to kind of, it's part of the AI, I guess. But I don't know much about generative AI. I'm not using it. A lot of clients that I work with probably don't want us to use that. But what I understand is it's a mimic, right? So it's like the large language models are just predicting the next word. Same with all the imagery. It's like, and this is why it's interesting if you're using your own work, because it's basically taking all these large data sets from things it's already seen. So you're probably not getting the most creative results. You're getting like the most predictable results or something. So you're still the creative. You're still in control. I remember somebody mentioning earlier about like, having good taste or art directing. You got to understand what a good composition is and stuff. So not everything you're going to get out of that is going to be a gem. So you got to find those gems, and then also, it's probably been done before. So maybe use it as a brainstorming tool or something that's like, okay, this is probably what a lot of people would expect if I type in this prompt. So what can I do that's different, could look different? So I think a lot of those things are trying to mimic reality, I'm guessing. But yeah.
So you think it's a good tool for like primarily just using it as like reference for work?
I think that's one way to approach it. Think about the things that you don't want to do, like maybe if you want to like create repeatable textures or something, right? So maybe create a bunch of textures using AI, and then but still model something or texture them. I don't know exactly what you want to use it for, but something that's like kind of labor intensive or you don't want to do maybe, but don't lean on it too heavily. But it definitely work it into your workflow.
I think the key here is to just research it and keep on top of what companies are, what they're doing with it, how they're using it, and how they're combining it with other tools. Some of the projects that I mentioned earlier that we're working on, the things that they're looking for are, Unreal, Blueprints, Python, C#, and those type of skills that go. Oh, and also Blender. Those are they're cropping up all the time. Every time I work on a project like this, I see all of this. Yes, you and
I
Matt.
just want to continue yourself for a second. AI is like CG, like computer graphics, 20 years ago, in terms of how it's being used in the mass media, both as a blanket term. I will make one quick comment about AI and generative AI and talking about ChatGPT in terms of process, is that especially in careers, which means economics and portfolios, is that again, the law right now is still very fluid, especially in this country. But right now, any offer that you generate by itself can't be copyrighted. It means that it can be copied but used by somebody else, and you'll never get paid if you aren't being careful. So the value of visual arts, which have to do with IP law, copyright, patent, trademark. So far in this country, we're moving to a place where the courts have said that you can't copyright that work. Now, part of the collaborative work, in other words, you create some background textures, okay, which have been done for 30 years in CG, and then incorporate them into a movie. And that movie, that Sony movie, or Pixar movie, when it's all compiled together, it'll be part of a copyrighted work that Pixar owns or Sony owns, and they'll be very happy to make $30 million on. But the problem is that one texture that you generated by itself is not copyrightable. Okay, so it has issues. Right now, there's major things going on in the UK. People who are in charge of OpenAI are now asking the Trump administration to destroy copyright completely, otherwise he can't be a trillionaire. So,
I think the legal aspects of it is another whole topic, and there's stories coming out all the time. There was just one this week about SAG-AFTRA, and they're starting a class action lawsuit. But I don't really think that's a discussion
And
for
these
this
two can
meeting.
talk afterwards too.
Yeah, you should have a private, take it offline and have a private conversation afterwards. Okay, so some of you are still awake, although the gentleman in the back with the ponytail is questionable. Thank you all for coming. Thanks to the panelists. The other ones have already run. Thanks, Samir. Thanks, David. And thank you all for sitting.